Welcome back to J.L. Smith, the Wind Specialist. I'm Jeff Smith, and today I'm going to introduce you to a great friend and fellow technician, Jim Germann. Jim is one of the partners in Hollis Germann Music, and I visited him recently in a shop in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Let's go meet Jim. Hey Jim, it's great to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you too,
Thanks
Jeff.
for having me here. It's good to sit down with you for a few minutes. I want to ask you about your beginnings in the trade. You started off in the Los Angeles area, right?
That's correct.
Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, I started working in the repair trade as an apprentice with Oleg Garbazov at a place called Oleg's Music on Melrose Avenue in Hollywood, which was just around the corner from the Musicians Union.
This was when?
This would be about 1981.
Okay.
And I had heard through the grapevine, a friend of mine, he and I were on the road together, and he was a saxophone player, and he told me Oleg was looking for some help because he, at that point in time, was a one-man shop, and he was in over his head doing repair. Well, my friend knew I liked to tinker with my own clarinet anyway. So he said, well, you're always doing that. You're always oiling your horn and stuff. He said, why don't you go talk to Oleg and see if he might take you on as help. So I gave Oleg a call, stopped in and saw him, and he says, well, what can you do? And I said, well, nothing. You know, I just play. And he says, well, I'm really looking for help. You know, here, I'm in over my head. And I said, well, why don't you just show me a couple of tasks and let me try it and see if it's going to be a good fit for you. And it was. And I worked with him for the remainder of the years that I lived in LA, which was from 79 to 90, and then moved back here to Pittsburgh at that time.
And that was, were you working on student instruments and professional instruments, or you had a specific clientele there?
Well, you know, it was an interesting beginning. I'd say it's probably a beginning most people don't get a chance to have. I was very fortunate, and it was very unique that I was in a situation where I'd say 90% of our customers were working professionals, either out in the gig scene or in the studios doing film dates and record dates. So what I think that meant, and this isn't to take away from other ways of learning the trade, but at least for me, what was good about it is that my skill level had to be picked up to the uppermost level very quickly. And what I wasn't allowed to do was get away with any inadequate repair. And it wasn't always just Oleg telling me that something wasn't right. I had to please those customers. They were smart, intelligent musicians, and they knew if something wasn't right. So I didn't have the opportunity to be mediocre. So
you were working very closely, directly with the musicians.
That's
You'd
right.
actually hand the instrument back to them, and what do you think?
There was just two of us. Yeah, it was Oleg's shop, and I worked in it for him. And he taught me the trade. Yeah. So, yes, I had to deal with the musicians. Also, I was in Los Angeles as a player, so I had the opportunity to, let's say, get my name, my reputation out there and spread it amongst the musicians I was working with, and brought some of them into the shop. And then, of course, I had to put a different coat on and stand behind the counter and please them in a different way. I had to produce what they were looking for. So it was a small shop. It was about a 600 square foot facility with two of us in it, 2 workbenches, and we were also selling things, you know, accessories and instruments as well. But the demand was great. So I really always had to be very attentive to detail from the very beginning.
I've seen also that you've developed a very, what I would call a personalized style of work. It's you have a signature look about your jobs. How did that come about? What inspired that?
Well, look, I'm not I didn't originate the idea of a signature look. I mean, I don't take credit for anything in those terms, but I took essentially what others had already done and just sort of transformed it into my own signature, as you said. The idea of coating saxophone pads with a colored coating is not new. When I was in college at Berkeley, as a matter of fact, a side note, you and I went to Berkeley together. There was a guy named Emilio in Boston who, certainly at the time, was the most famous woodwind repairman of all time. He was well advertised and very good. And he was my introduction to seeing what his personalized approach, particularly with saxophone, was, And so, yeah, basically you could say I kind of copied that, but I put my own spin on it.
Right.
So I don't claim it to be original, I just claim it to be somewhat unique to my own work. The colored coating on the pads, which helps preserve the leather. Not waterproof, but it does preserve the life of the overhaul. A bar that crosses over from the right-hand F key to the top bridge key and just gives a better adjustment, things of that nature, and just the look of the pad job.
Yeah, so it's about achieving a certain look to your work, but also practical reliability you're looking for in your job.
Yes, and like most repairmen, I have a certain amount of ego, and I like people to, when somebody sees the player next to them in the sax, like, oh, I know who did your horn just by looking at it.
Right.
You know,
Right.
That's part of the reason behind it. It's not all voodoo. It's advertising.
Sure.
You know, and it seems to work.
Yeah. Well, fast forward a few years from the LA experience, you've come back to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And you operate Hollis Germann music, and is the clientele I would expect is quite different from that bustling studio players and working professionals scene, right?
It is. As a matter of fact, even I'll backtrack before Don Hollis and I started this business. We worked together at another music store. And when I first moved from LA and was working at this other music store with several other repair technicians, I was getting instruments done. Like somebody would bring in an instrument today and I'd have it ready tomorrow afternoon, like an overhaul. And they were kind of going, well, what are you doing? You know, like, what's the hurry?
How's that possible?
And I said, well, it's not so much, but not that it was unique to me that I could do that, but what was unique was that there wasn't a rush here that there was in LA. And I thought when somebody brought in an instrument, they needed it the next day. So I still had that LA attitude, like, oh, they have a session tomorrow, or an important concert tomorrow night. I got to get this done. And it was like, no, I realized that still does exist here. Symphony orchestra players and other, you know, various musical genres that use musicians. They need their instruments relatively fast, but somehow the cranking out wasn't necessary like it was in LA. Like one day I remember a working professional coming in at 8 a.m. He made an appointment. He says, I need my overhaul in one day.
Wow.
Can you do it? And I said, I'll do it. And Oleg said, I'll make sure you're not bothered. I do it in a Russian accent, but I'll avoid getting dramatic here. But he says, I'll make sure you're not interrupted. So I started, and he picked up the instrument at the end of our workday, completely overhauled. You know, now I think if I tried to do that today, I probably wouldn't make it. You know, I had a different mindset then. I was very fast, and I feel like I've slowed down living here in Pennsylvania. But yeah, that's what that's all about. And now here we are in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I co-own this business with my partner Don Hollis, who's a professional orchestral bassoonist and a great repairman with a great reputation. And we have great people that work for us here. It's a small shop. I like it that way. I know we've talked before about, well, what about expansion? What about, are you thinking about doing this and doing that? And I think, you know, I'm really quite old-fashioned when it comes to business. I like people to come in. I like them to see what we're selling. I like them to try it. I like to see them pleased with the repair when they pick it up. This is what I like to do. The whole internet scene, things of that nature, it's necessary, but what I really desire is the personal interaction with musicians.
Well, you've got a great philosophy of both the work and of business, Jim, and I want to thank you for the time you spent with us sharing that and sharing this.
No, you're certainly welcome, and it's always good to see you, and thank you for the interview.
It's a pleasure. Thanks.
Sure.
Good to see you.